Hey everybody, it's ShadowStar here, back for more reviews of the Pokemon anime. I've already reviewed Kanto and the Orange Islands, and now it's finally time to review the Johto journeys. I don't just mean Season 3 called the Johto journeys, I mean all of Ash's journey through Johto. So from the first episode all the way to when he finishes up in the Pokemon League. Every Johto episode. And boy, that is a lot compared to the... Johto has a lot, okay? Johto has more than Kanto and the Orange Islands combined. It has 160 episodes just of Kanto. That's a lot to get through. Is it all good or bad? Well, we'll get into that. But as always, I tend to go by character, so let's start with Ash. And compared to Kanto, obviously there's a vast improvement. And as I said near the end of the Orange Islands, Ash is definitely improved in Johto. He is more confident, strategic, he trains his Pokemon, he actually thinks about what things will work and what things won't work. He understands Pokemon. Basically, this is Ash as we truly know him. This is Ash thinking on his feet. He gets better, but all in all, this is Ash as he should be. But that's only as a strategist. What about his Pokemon? That's one of the downsides of the Johto adventures. Because he still uses some of his Kanto Pokemon, there's a bit of an unbalanced thing. Sometimes he'll use his Kanto starters, sometimes he'll catch new Pokemon, sometimes he'll favor one Pokemon more than the other. It's a bit of a mix and match. Let's start off with his old Pokemon. You've got Bulbasaur, and the thing with Bulbasaur is, straight away, it's at a disadvantage, because he's going to catch Chicarita, and Bulbasaur and Chicarita share very similar traits in terms of their usability, so it's often a battle of, okay, should he use Bulbasaur or Chicarita in the battle? They're so similar, and eventually Bulbasaur is used less and less, but the thing is, he stays as a regular team member 2 seasons into the adventure, so Bulbasaur kind of overstayed his welcome, and he didn't actually achieve much. He doesn't participate in a single one of the gym battles. He only participates in one of the Johto League battles, which was a good battle. He participates in one of the battles against Jackson, but in terms of the rest, Bulbasaur didn't do much. Squirtle, again, didn't do much, but they at least got rid of Squirtle early. Early into Season 3, Squirtle went back with the Squirtle Squad to be a firefighter. This was foreshadowed in one of the Orange Islands episodes, which I liked, but all in all, they got rid of him early, which it had to happen. They had to make way for Totodile, and Squirtle does come back for the Pokemon League and will come back for an occasional moment when they need him, but all in all, Squirtle has exited. Speaking of good Pokemon who exited, we had Charizard being great in Orange Islands at the end, and they even kind of talk about it at the beginning of how Charizard is overpowered. He serves well against the first badge, but he's overpowered against most of the trainers to the point where some people claim it's not fair, which, as we all know, Charizard leaves the Charcific Valley, but he does come back when Ash truly needs a strong Pokemon for a battle, whether it be the last gym battle or his 2 big battles in the Pokemon League, which we'll talk about soon. But, like I said, he had to get rid of his Kanto Pokemon eventually. But you know what he didn't need to do? Heracross. He caught Heracross as his first Pokemon in Johto, and it didn't participate in a single decent gym battle. It only participates in one major battle, and that's in the Pokemon League. And that's about it. He gets rid of Heracross very early into the adventure by sending it off to the lab, and it never comes back until the Pokemon League. I can understand that with his Kanto Pokemon, because they've had his time, but Heracross was a new one. He could have been a good fighter, but he never used it. I don't see why. See, if you count up the totals, Ash ends up having 6 total Johto Pokemon, which is not good, because obviously he can only have 5, because he's always got to have Pikachu with him. So therefore, someone was bound to be left away, and that was Heracross, caught too early and sent away too early. It's a shame. And yeah, that's about it. We do have Chicarita, one of his Pokemon I actually do enjoy. It didn't do too much as a Chicarita aside being cute, but once it evolved into Bayleaf, it had a few good fights. I believe it had a good fight against Chuck, it had a few good fights in the Pokemon League, and it had a few good, less important fights, but I know it had a few good fights, and I really underestimated just how cute Bayleaf can be as a Bayleaf. There was a few good episodes, like the Why Not episode, where Bayleaf was surprisingly cute for no reason. But then we have Totodile, and I know some people like Totodile, but I feel like Totodile doesn't really have a personality to latch onto, other than, oh look, it's happy and dancing all the time. It does have a good few battles here and there, like it has a good battle against, say, Whitney's Miltank, but that's about it. Of all this Johto Pokemon, I think Totodile's one I didn't care for, but it's not bad or anything. Then you've got Cyndaquil, a Pokemon which, from memory, at first I didn't really think about it much. I think it was either forgotten or underrated, but watching through these episodes, Cyndaquil proved to be really good. It was really good against Bugsy. It had really good battles with Jasmine, and even helped out quite a bit with Price. Honestly, Cyndaquil did a lot more and was quite frankly the powerhouse out of his Johto set. Then you've got his two lesser used Pokemon. First off, you've got Knocktown, the obligatory bird Pokemon. Honestly, Knocktown didn't do much. At first it seemed like Knocktown was going to be special because it's smart and it was able to outthink things, and it might be a leader of the team, but that only came up like once. And then Knocktown, of course, just gets this typical bird treatment of, it only gets called out when it needs to A, look for a missing Pokemon, or look for a missing thing. Seriously, count how many times they say he sends out Knocktown just for looking for something, or just to pop Team Rocket's balloon. And it even gets lampshaded. That's all Knocktown is for. And it's not just Knocktown. Any of his bird Pokemon get this treatment, although some bird Pokemon he catches are better than others. Then you got Fampy, an egg he got very late in his adventure, and therefore didn't get to participate in any real battles except one. He participated in one of Ash's Johto League battles, which was a good battle, but obviously Fampy didn't get as much attention because it was his last catch. But to be fair, luckily later adventures will actually bring back Fampy, which I like. I'm glad that some of the later adventures kind of give Pokemon a second chance, but that's for another story. Fampy for now didn't do much other than being cute and help out in one episode. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. We've got Misty. First off, before we talk about other stuff, we'll talk about her two new Pokemon. You've got her Poliwhirl and Politoed. Well, she already had the Poliwag at the end of Orange Islands, but it didn't do much. And it evolved quickly into Poliwhirl, and it stayed a Poliwhirl for most of the adventure, being essentially Misty's powerhouse. Honestly, I forgot how much they used it. It was very late in the game when it did evolve into Politoed, and I feel like Politoed is kind of Psyduck if Psyduck does something. Because they'll send out Politoed, it claps, she'll say now's not the time for clapping, then it will use Water Gun and be strong. It's like Psyduck, only it's actually useful. And, you know, she still has Psyduck. We get less of the Psyduck gag. I guess the writers realized how boring that was, but they never evolved it either. You know, honestly, outside of Poliwhirl, her other water types, being Staryu, Goldeen, and Psyduck, don't get as much attention these days. But I suppose she does actually have a quite big team. Her other capture was a Corsair, which it was very late in the adventure because it was in the Whirl Islands, but it was again one of her best catches. And, you know, it was the one she caught with the lure ball. It did have some good moments, but like I said in Kanto and Orange Islands, Misty and Brock don't really do much because they don't have a definable goal. It's hard to really pinpoint when their Pokemon get to do anything important because they don't have important battles to be a part of. And it's hard to really give them special moments. The only thing we really get with Misty is the World Cup. and that one time she found another water gym, so that's when they really started to ramp up what she's good for. But I feel like that was late in the game where they realized they were starting to get rid of Misty. Speaking of which, we have to talk about the departure. Now, while Brock also leaves at the end of the season, he does come back extremely early into Hoenn, so it's not really a departure, whereas this is the last time Misty travels as a regular companion. It's not her last appearance. She makes some cameos in Hoenn and eventually in Sun and Moon, but as a full-time companion, the Johto Journeys, once the Johto League is over, is her final appearance. And while her leaving was a sad moment, I wasn't too moved because, like I said, with no definable goal, I've never really been attached to Misty. I feel like Misty and Brock became more boring in these seasons too, because let's say in the Orange Islands, I did mention how Misty and Ash were bickering a lot more. They've kind of went backwards where Misty is kind of humble and doesn't do much except talk about being a water trainer. And then you've got Brock, who, again, doesn't do much other than being the parent of this group. So, like I said, his two companions don't do much. Brock does catch a Pineco, which evolves into a Fortress, which, honestly, Pineco doesn't do much, and it evolves into Fortress very late in the game. So, a lot like other Pokemon, it's the only one that sticks around, because Fortress will be the only Pokemon which sticks around when he comes to do his Hoenn adventures, but that's for another time. So at least, like I said, they didn't let Fortress fall by the wayside, but Fortress didn't do much in Johto. We did have Crobat, which, he's had this Zubat for a while, and it didn't do much, and it finally evolves into Golbat and then Crobat, and finally does stuff. It has a few good episodes because they finally talk about the stuff that it can do with Supersonic, but not much else could be said about Brock. Like I said in Kanto and Orange Islands, he's just kind of the parent of the group. And I'll talk about more of my feelings of him in Hoenn when although he does come back in Hoenn, there's a few episodes without him, but we'll talk about that when it happens. Like I said with Tracy, sometimes him being the parent of the group is a bit too much. But, oh well, what can you do? Brock is Brock. He's never really had much of a goal that is visible. Sure, he wants to be a breeder, but what can you do with that? Now let's talk about Team Rocket. Not much has changed, but I feel like they've become more defined. Like, their roles are a bit more defined. Jessie is the one, quote-unquote, in charge of the group usually, but she's not necessarily the brains. Meowth is usually the brains. You'll usually notice Meowth is the one, say, in charge of any machine they build usually. James is the softer-hearted one, and Jessie's the one in charge. We do actually have a few good things about Team Rocket. For one thing, Jessie's Lickitung, which didn't do too much, is traded away for a Wobbuffet. Now, anyone familiar with the anime will know that Wobbuffet is essentially the third most important Pokemon. After Pikachu and Meowth, Wobbuffet has the most appearances through the entire anime as it sticks around. But honestly, although it's just used to doing that joke, I liked how in the beginning there was actually a bit of a joke where Wobbuffet would pop in the motto before Meowth, and there was a bit of a rivalry. Plus, there was one good episode, like the Wayward Wobbuffet, that I really liked, or the episode with Why Not, which was another really good one for Wobbuffet. So I feel like Johto gave some good episodes to Wobbuffet more than later seasons will. Plus, they actually do utilize Wobbuffet's counter when necessary, although not as much as they should. Speaking of weird Pokemon which got a weird treatment, we do have James's Victory Bell, which it doesn't do too much. It's still the same recurring gag as in Orange Islands and Kanto, but its exit is one of the weirdest. He runs into the Magikarp salesman who sells him a Weepin' Bell for his Magikarp. He trades Weepin' Bell for James's Victory Bell. Then James takes the Weepin' Bell, and after one battle, it evolves into a Weepin' Bell. So now he's got another Victory Bell, which in the same episode, Jessie then kicks it out of Team Rocket. All this happens in one episode, so he gets rid of Victory Bell, gains a Weepin' Bell, evolves it, and then gets rid of it, and now he has no Victory Bell. It was a weird episode and a really dumb way to get rid of a Pokemon, and that's the end of Victory Bell. Not that anyone's going to miss him. It was a pointless member, but I suppose the only other thing about Team Rocket is not our main characters, but we do have a few good appearances of Butch and Cassidy in the Whirl Islands. We do have 2 separate stories devoted to other Team Rocket. First in the Whirl Islands with Lugia, and then in the Lake of Rage with the Red Gyarados. It was finally nice to see other Team Rocket members, because outside of Butch and Cassidy and our main 3 people, I think the only time we've had other Team Rocket members was in the SSN episode. So it was finally good to have some stories with them and seeing them as an actual threat. So let's move on to the gym battles. Now, we all know Kanto's had weird gym battles and Orange Islands was weird for different reasons, but the gym battles in Johto are what we come to know gym battles to be. Actually competent battles that are enjoyable to watch for the most part. Every battle is a good battle. Ash earns every single one, maybe except one of them. But honestly, all of them were good battles and all of them gave his Pokemon a good chance to shine. Let's start off with Faulkner. First off, it was about the last major battle Charizard did before leaving the group, and Faulkner showed to be a good character and a good leader for only having 1 episode. You'll notice around the halfway point that the gym leaders stop having 1 episode. Faulkner and Bugsy only have 1 episode, but later on, all gym leaders usually have at least an episode or 2 to develop before the battle, which helps them to be a bit more memorable than Faulkner or Bugsy, who, while they were nice characters, you kind of forget what their defining traits was. Bugsy was alright, and it was nice to see a younger gym leader, and it was also, of course, Cyndaquil's heyday, because Cyndaquil had this thing where, in its first few battles, it had trouble using its fire moves, and I suppose the Bug Gym was the one where it really learned to harness its firepower. So, again, like I said, all the battles are good. Speaking of battles, we have Whitney. Now, we all make the jokes about her in the game, which makes it all the more funny, but that Whitney is the first gym battle in Johto that Ash has a loss to. He loses to her. He was winning at first, but he lost to her with, obviously, the Miltank. Then he gets a rematch the next episode, and there's a weird thing that happens in the rematch. So, the first match was a 3-on-3 battle, like always. The second rematch, though, Whitney just says, "Oh, I'll just use Miltank." Fine, you'd expect it to be a 1-on-1 battle. No, pay attention. She only uses Miltank. Ash uses Cyndaquil, Totodile, and Pikachu, 3 Pokemon to take out 1. So the match was rigged in Ash's favor. It was really weird, and nobody picked up on the fact that Ash used 3 and she used 1 in the rematch. It was a weird moment, but at least, hey, we get the joke that, hey, he lost to Miltank, the same Pokemon which has supposedly beat a lot of people in the actual games. Plus, again, Whitney was actually a cute and enjoyable character. She wasn't the crybaby idiot she's supposed to be in the game. She was a delightful character. Instead of her being a crybaby, they tried to portray her as more of being clumsy but cute. Then you got Morty. His personality was a little forgettable, but they actually tied him in with the plot because he's in Ecruteak, he gets to have a bit of a mention of Ho-Oh and Suicune, and we get to learn more about the Ecruteak backstory. And one thing I like is that's actually the first time Ho-Oh is mentioned by name, and it's the first time we finally get some significance to the fact that Ash saw Ho-Oh in the very first episode. Finally, he gets to say it to somebody who actually knows what a Ho-Oh is, and we get to mention it. The battle itself, though, was, this time, it's Knocktown's turn to have a good episode, because they're using ghost types. Knocktown has attacks which can illuminate ghosts, and at least it was an enjoyable battle. Although, well, I say enjoyable, for some reason, Morty seemed to be the most forgettable, because I can't remember any good moments from the battle other than, hey, this was Knocktown's time to shine. Shine, get it? Because it was a shiny Knocktown? Yeah. For some reason, Ash called it shiny. They don't lampshade it too much either, but hey, they like to show off shinies, because obviously Gen 2 was the first time we had shinies. Then you've got Chuck. Fun fact, except for Watson, Chuck is the last time in the Pokemon anime where a gym leader is met and beaten in the same episode. Every other gym leader will always have an episode to set up, or at least the gym will last more than one episode or something, and it develops a gym leader. Chuck is the last one to be a one and done episode type of gym. He had some good moments, and honestly, up until this moment, Chicarita / Bayleaf had kind of sat in the background and not done much in terms of battling. This was finally Bayleaf showing that it can actually do something, and this was a good battle for Bayleaf. But other than that, there wasn't too much. It was just Bayleaf fights a Poliwrath and a Machoke. That's about it. Then you've got Jasmine. Now, we first meet Jasmine before Chuck, and you do get the medicine for Ampharos thing, which is like the games, which is again a nice reference. But the delay between Jasmine is so significant because we have the Whirl Islands arc. Not that that's a bad thing, because I like it. You know what was a big delay? The gap between Morty and Chuck is so huge. Morty is met very early into Season 4, and Chuck is the last thing we do in Season 4. I'll get to this later, but boy, there's a lot of filler. But speaking of Jasmine, once again, this was Cyndaquil's time to shine. Like I said, Cyndaquil had some good moments, and that was actually a really good, tough battle. Cyndaquil versus Steelix. Sure, it's got a type advantage, but Steelix is huge, it's vicious, it's got strong attacks, and, Cyndaquil's small and cute, but it finally proves to have some really good firepower when it can destroy the sandstorm, and it turns the sandstorm into like a fire tornado, which looks cool, and it was actually a really good moment. So, again, Cyndaquil got really good moments to shine. Then you've got Price, who first he had this arc where he doesn't trust Pokemon, he has to go find his Piloswine, but then we actually get the battle, and it was again a good battle. Cyndaquil does some nice stuff in the beginning where it gets frozen and it melts the ice with its flames, but for once this was Pikachu's battle, and to be honest, I'm glad, because honestly, while Pikachu was meant to be the important one, I'm both glad it took the sidelines and didn't have any significant battles, but at the same time, I'm glad we finally did get a significant battle for Pikachu, because honestly, Pikachu hadn't done much in Johto up until this point. Obviously, it's still Pikachu, it still has some good fights, and, we don't have to use it all the time, because he's always going to be here. He always has good fights, so he doesn't need to take the show in every single Johto match. Then you got the final gym, Claire. Now, you have the first match, which, although he didn't technically lose, he was getting his ass handed to him before the episode was interrupted by Team Rocket stealing something. That sounds like it would be a bad thing, but it leads into a really cool episode where, they have to go to this lake, and Charizard shows up to help Ash, and Claire's there, and Liza's there, and they all have to stop this raging Dragonite, and it's a really good fight between Charizard and Dragonite, and everyone's helping out, and honestly, I love those big eventful episodes, so although it delayed the gym battle, it was a good big episode for Charizard, a good big episode for Claire, and a nice plot. Plus, it just helped us know Claire even more. And honestly, that wasn't the battle against Claire. The actual final battle was interesting because, one, he brought back Snorlax of all Pokemon, and then Charizard. Charizard came back to help, having been gone since the beginning of Season 3. So, like I said, Charizard shows up for the big battles. Speaking of the big battles, you want to know what's a huge improvement this season? The Pokemon League. So, we do have the Johto Pokemon League. Honestly, one of my favorite Pokemon Leagues. While other seasons are my favorite seasons, I think that the Johto League is probably one of my favorites. Maybe Sinnoh takes a spot beyond that, but first off, if you thought, as we all know, Kanto was a mess. Johto, this is how you do a Pokemon League. We get good battles to introduce trainers who actually feel like worthy trainers. We get to have good scenes, and we get to see structure to the tournament. You know I love world building. I love like seeing how the tournament is structured, how it's viewed on TV. You can really understand a lot about the tournament. I love all the little details that just show how this would be in a world. Like, take yourself out of Ash's shoes and be a regular person in his world, and imagine you get to watch the Pokemon League on TV. I love all those little details, but let's talk about the Johto League. We start with his first match because to get into the Johto League or officially qualify, you have 3 screening matches, but for some reason they only did 1. We have a fight where Pikachu fights a Furret, which Misty mislabels as a ground type, but we do have a good fight. It's a 1-on-1 battle, and it was a nice battle, and it gave Pikachu, again, time to shine. Then you have Then, for some reason, they skipped the 2 other screening matches. This is about the only odd point, but I suppose they could have stretched it a tiny bit, because that's the one thing I'm going to say in these later seasons is there's no excuse for rushing the league when you have, 100 filler episodes. Why can't you just knock off some filler and make the league a bit bigger? But honestly, I didn't mind that the 2 other screening matches were missing. Then you get the opening ceremony, which, once again, Ash carries a torch, which was a little more forced than last time, but the torch runner gets injured 3 seconds in thanks to Team Rocket, but oh well. But speaking of Team Rocket in the league, they're not there. Remember in Kanto where they friggin' ruined the entire league by interrupting Ash's battles and ruining his battle with Richie and everything? No. This time, the riders have learned their lesson. Starting from now, Team Rocket takes the sidelines. Throughout the league, they're just selling stuff and they've got their own little thing going on, and we occasionally cut to them, but they don't interrupt anything, and that's what I like. Don't get me wrong, I love Team Rocket, but there are times they need to stay away from the action and just let us have the Pokemon League. Then you've got the round robin. Ash must participate in the round robin tournament in order to qualify for the main tournament, which, first off, even though these are one-off trainers who we've only met for the purpose of the Pokemon League, maybe it's just my nostalgia bias, but I feel like, Macy and Jackson are far more memorable characters than anyone Ash faced in the Kanto League outside of Richie. Macy was a good character. It gave Phanpy and Squirtle a time to shine because Squirtle came back to help fight off her fire types, so that was a good battle for Squirtle. Then you've got the battle against Jackson, another good battle, and it's one of the rare times they tie, because they explain because of the point system that even if Ash ties, he could still win, which is an odd point because why would you even include the chance of a tie? How often do people tie? But of course, because they mentioned it, that means they're going to tie. But it was still a really good battle between Bulbasaur and Meganium, and that's one good thing about the Johto League. Every single one of Ash's Pokemon that he has access to, except for Kingler, gets used in the Johto League. Every single one. It's so good. Everyone gets a time to shine. And then he makes it to the actual Silver Conference tournament, and we get the battle with Gary. Now, here's the thing. Gary as a rival hasn't done much. People always remember Gary as this huge, great rival, but I swear between both Kanto and Johto, he probably only has maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen appearances throughout the whole first 5 seasons outside the Pokemon League. It's so weird. They build him up as this big rival, but getting beyond that, they never do much. They battle once before he goes to Johto, and that's it. People always complain that he didn't battle. But rest assured, we get the battle in Johto, and holy hell, is it a good battle. Like I said, in the Orange Islands, I said his final battle in Orange Islands was a testament to the battles to come. This is a battle worth talking about. A full 6-on-6 battle between Ash and Gary. It's even-sided. It looks like Gary might have the advantage, but we finally get that epic battle between Charizard and Blastoise, and oh boy, it's a big battle. I don't know what else I can say about it. Fun fact about that battle, though. It is the only time in the history of the anime that Pikachu is technically not in his team. Remember, you can only have 6 Pokemon, and since it's a 6-on-6 battle and Pikachu's not in the battle, Pikachu's technically not in his team, although not much is done about it. He's just sitting on the bench. But yeah, then we get Harrison. Now, we already met Harrison in the first episode of the Pokemon League, where we learned about the torch, and we meet Harrison, and we learn he's from the Hoenn region, but then we get the battle, and like Gary, it's a really good 6-on-6 battle where even though Ash loses this battle, it was a really good battle worth watching. It was a battle right down to the wire, and, it's worthy of being a good battle. Even though he lost, and I'm not bothered that he lost, I'm glad if he had to lose, he lost to a good battle. And Harrison was, of course, a perfect bridge. Gary felt like essentially the conclusion to the original Johto series, and Harrison is essentially our bridge into Hoenn, because with Harrison comes Hoenn Pokemon and a good lead into the Hoenn series, because after the League, there's a couple episodes and then we're off to Hoenn, and then, well, I'll talk about that later, but like I said, that's Harrison for you, and that's League. Holy hell, the Johto League is actually a really good league with battles worth watching. Every single character, even the one-offs like Macy and Harrison, Jackson, are worthy characters worth remembering. Now let's get on to other characters in the Johto series. We have a few recurring characters who get the spotlight, although they're not in the league. First off, we have Casey. Somebody met in the second episode, and she only has 4 appearances, not counting her appearances in Pokemon Chronicles, but she just stands out as one of the most memorable characters. I don't know, maybe it's just because Chicarita's cute, maybe it's just because she's an adorable character, or maybe it's just because I love the Electabuzz theme song. Some people claim she's annoying, but I absolutely love her anytime she shows up. She's a great character, she's feisty, she's fun, I love hearing the Electabuzz theme song, but honestly, Casey's one of the few characters where she's about the only recurring character within Johto, but she's a really good character. I'm glad we have her. Speaking of characters, we have some returning characters. We have Richie, who shows up in the Whirl Islands when we have the Team Rocket story. So when they're in the Whirl Islands, they have an incident where they meet Richie, and there's a Lugia with a baby Lugia. The Lugia gets stolen by Team Rocket. Not Team Jesse and James, but like full-on Butch and Cassidy, evil Team Rocket. It's several episodes, and it's a really good story. That's the thing, although there's a lot of filler, sometimes they do try and fill the filler with actual good arcs where we have a few episodes devoted to a mini story. Plus, it was good to have Richie just part of the team for once, since he kind of got overlooked in the Kanto League, so it was nice to see him come back, and it's the only time we'll see Richie ever again outside of Pokemon Chronicles. Speaking of characters most people never expected to come back, Todd came back. Todd Snap. But unlike before, where he didn't really do much, here in Johto, he at least has a goal and a mini story of trying to find a picture of Articuno, and at least they finally gave him a little goal, and it felt better that he was in these 3 episodes than the Kanto ones. Well, it depends what you mean by better. Him as a character was better, but the Kanto episodes were more iconic. But let's talk about the big problems with Johto. Because it's got to last for 3 seasons, it's got to be long. It's 160 episodes to get through. That's a lot. And boy, a lot of it, I talked about all the best parts like gym leaders. Those are great episodes. Catching new Pokemon are great. Outside of that, that's only maybe a handful of episodes. What's left? Filler. Lots and lots and lots of filler. And unlike Kanto, which had good pacing and memorable filler, the vast majority of episodes in Johto were not worthy filler episodes. Take a drink if you can figure out this plot. Ash and his friends encounter a new trainer who has a Pokemon which performs a unique task, and they're having trouble with it. Team Rocket try to steal the new Pokemon. They stop Team Rocket. The new Pokemon learns to trust or gets along better with the trainer, and then the episode ends. This plot is pulled off so many new times as a way to introduce a new Johto Pokemon, and it is so repetitive. It's actually so formulaic. See, the problem is, obviously we know Johto has to last 3 seasons. That's a fact that they learned. Kanto and Orange Islands were still new and they didn't know where the series was going. But at this point, the writers knew we've got to make it last 3 seasons until the new generation comes out. Later generations get better at this by filling it with more arcs, more character moments, and other things for the other characters to do. But for Johto, the only thing we have to do is gym battles, catching new Pokemon, and that's about it. Which just leaves so much filler episodes and a huge gap between a lot of gyms. A lot of the gyms, especially I'd say between Morty and Chuck, have a huge gap with pretty much nothing of consequence happening except maybe 1 or 2 episodes where a Pokemon is caught or evolved. And that's about it. There is so much filler to get through. And when you're binge watching it and you're binge watching 160 episodes and only a few of them are worth it, it can be really draining. Like I said, the episodes that are good are really good. The gym battles are a huge step up from Kanto. The filler, on the other hand, is a huge letdown. They can't make memorable filler. Now, there was a few good episodes that stood out. Some singular episodes I can remember, and these are only like a couple out of 100 of them, was Hocus Pokemon. Now, the weird thing is, this is one little episode. It's the episode where they meet some random girl who performs magic, but everyone remembers that one moment at the end of the episode where Ash turns into a Pikachu. The thing is, this happens for less than a minute. And yet, it is one of the most iconic moments which spawned so much fan fiction and fan art, it's ridiculous. One teeny tiny minute of Johto spawned so much in the fandom. It's crazy. This one little moment in the episode, of one little random episode, it's weird. You know what's weirder though? Ash remains a Pikachu between the end of that episode and the next episode. The next episode is still Pikachu, although he turns into Ash like after 5 seconds. But let's say you're a kid and for some reason you missed Hocus Pokemon. Then you turn on the next episode and he's a Pikachu. That would be the most confusing thing in the world. Could you imagine? That'd be ridiculous. But it was still a fun moment, and boy, we all know how much fanfiction and fan art that little thing inspired. But another episode I liked, which is a total filler episode where nothing of consequence happens, is the Wayward Wobbuffet. I don't know why this episode just stuck out in my mind. It's an episode where Pikachu's trapped in a box that Team Rocket had both, but Wobbuffet has the key and it gets separated from everyone, so both Ash and Team Rocket are chasing it, and for some reason, Wobbuffet just ends up in this weird series of chain of events where it keeps getting taken away, like it's on a moving truck, then somehow gets knocked onto a moving boat, then hot air balloon, and somehow Wobbuffet just ends up into all these situations. It almost feels Looney Tunes-esque how Wobbuffet just keeps ending up in weird situations, and like I said, it's one of the few Wobbuffet-focused episodes ever, and I'm glad it happened. Speaking of memorable, hilarious episodes, there's the radio episode where Ash and Team Rocket both participate in a radio show. There's some good comedic moments in the episode where he gets interviewed for his battle against Whitney. Then there's a moment where they are actors in a stage play, but then Team Rocket interrupts the stage play halfway through, but the narrator keeps narrating the stage play as this Team Rocket is supposed to be part of the plot, and it just ends up being really hilarious because they keep switching between the stage play and the actual thing that's happening in the episode. Although, there's one weird thing. They have Meowth be, in one of the other bits in the episode, they have Meowth be a ventriloquist dummy, which, on one hand, that's a brilliant thing. Why haven't Team Rocket tried that? That's genius. On the other hand, why would you bring a ventriloquist dummy to a radio show? Half the gimmick is you need to see the dummy to prove that it's not there. Why would you put it on the radio? That doesn't achieve much. But that was just a random thing in the episode, who cares? The only other episodes were episodes which, there was like 1 or 2 episodes which focused on Ho-Oh and Suicune, which it was finally good to have some focus on Ho-Oh since, he was there in the first episode and we finally shed some light on this mystery. And we get Suicune, which means we meet Useem, but not much happens with it. We see Suicune in the first episode of Johto, but that's about it. Now we have the arcs. There's a few arcs which do happen in the series, and funny enough, they're all in the last season of Johto. Johto takes place over seasons 3, 4, and 5, and 3 and 4 are filled to the brim with filler, and season 5 has a lot of good episodes and a lot of good mini arcs and character moments. There's still some filler, but I feel like they managed to fill season 5 a lot better. First off, you've got the Whirl Islands. Starting off season 5, they spend a total of 14 episodes on the Whirl Islands. You'd think that'd be boring, but no. First off, you've got the build-up and the actual participation in the World Cup, a mini tournament exclusive to water Pokemon. This leads to some good moments with Misty, where she catches a Corsair. Ash gets to participate in a tournament, and so does Misty. So it was actually a good plot, and I like the fact that we had a little mini tournament arc. It reminds me a bit of in Unova when we have mini tournament arcs as well. Then, following that, while still on the Whirl Islands, we have the Lugia Arc. Like I said, we have an adventure with Richie where we've got a baby Lugia, which Team Rocket steals. It takes place over multiple episodes, and it's a really good arc. I love it. I love these arcs which continue where it's not just one and done episode. It takes a few episodes, and it feels like something's actually happening with actual cliffhangers and actual story, and Team Rocket's actually being a villain. It finally brings some credibility to Team Rocket, other than just the 3 we're used to. Speaking of Team Rocket, they also had tried to steal the red Gyarados in the Lake of Rage, which also takes place over a couple episodes, and it's how we're introduced to Lance, another good episode. Then, like I said, we have Blackthorn City, where he participates in the gym, and we have a really good episode where we stop the Dragonite. And I suppose the final arc is where Ash is given a Larvitar egg, and he has to befriend a Larvitar because it was stolen by poachers, and then he gives it back to a Tyranitar, and it has a few good memorable moments. Obviously, the most memorable and bizarre episode of that is Address Unknown. They learn to befriend the Larvitar because somehow the unknown fuses with it, and we don't go into a world representing Larvitar's like anxieties and fears, and it's a really trippy world because there's all these weird things happening, and it's, I don't know, like you say Pikachu's big, and you see how Larvitar's representation of what it trusts and doesn't trust, and it's just a really wacky episode, and I love it. And then of course you finally give it back, and we get to meet the poachers who, despite their appearance in one episode, they're somehow memorable. Maybe it's because I saw that episode a lot as a kid. But, okay, now that we've covered all the major sticking points of Johto, the filler, the arcs, the good points, the bad points, there's a few interesting things to note. First off, there's one really, really weird nitpick I have with Johto. Around the middle portion, at the end of every episode, obviously, at the end of every episode, the narrator closes out the episode, as he always does. But usually he'll just say something like, oh, they're on their journey to Blackthorn City, or on their journey to the Hoenn League. Just that usual thing to close out the episode. But for some reason, he'll consistently say, on their journey to Johto. Not the Johto League, Johto. They'll just say he's on their journey to Johto. But they're in Johto. Why do they keep making this mistake? It happens so many times at the end of every goddamn episode. It's so weird. They eventually stopped doing this, and I don't know, did the writers just mistranslate something and assume Johto League is just Johto and not realize the region is called Johto? It's so weird. Speaking of which, although it's not until almost the very end, there is a good animation improvement. So the first 5 seasons were done with hand-drawn cell animation, like the first 14 seasons of Simpsons. The seasons going forward were done with digital. So starting with the episode he's talking about Uelekid, which is the final episode of season 5, we have no more cells, we upgrade the animation, and everything just looks more bright and vibrant. A few of the colors get changed. For example, some of the clothes are a lot more bright, and the only notable thing is, because of the changing animation, pay close attention. Seasons 1 through 5, Jessie's hair is more of a bright red with a little hint of purple, where if you look at her hair starting from season 6 onwards, after they changed to digital animation, her hair is more of a pinkish purple. It's an interesting thing to note, and it's the only real major change thanks to the cell animation being changed. Another huge improvement, or not improvement, just huge positive point of Johto is the music. First off, the opening songs, Master Quest and Born to Be a Winner, really good songs. But you know what else is good? The soundtrack. The soundtrack really starts using a lot of remixes of music from the games. Like you hear a remix of the Gold and Silver Rival theme, or the SS Title theme, or the Champion theme, or there's just a lot of really good music for climactic moments, and it's just so good to see it. A lot of people like talk about music when we have a remake and say, oh, I can't wait to hear this music improve, but go listen to the anime soundtrack. The music for Johto and Hoenn has some really good remixes of video game music. I love it, and most people don't notice it, but there's so much good soundtracks. And the best part of this, well, not the best part, but one of the last really good points of this is the bridge. By that I mean the build up to Hoenn. Thanks to a few brief cameos by Kecleons on a blimp or a Wynot, we have a few good hints of Hoenn Pokemon, but then we meet Harrison and he's talking all about Hoenn. It's not like one little mention, it's a constant mention, which I love. It's a great way to get Ash excited for the moving forward to Hoenn. And as I said, Misty leaves at the end of Johto. Brock temporarily leaves, although he will be back, and Ash gets rid of all of his Pokemon except Pikachu. He changes his clothes. A lot of things change at the end of the series between this and Hoenn. This Johto is essentially the end of an era. Most people encapsulate Kanto, Orange Islands, and Johto as the original series, and moving forward, it's a whole... Although it's still the same Ash, it's still a direct continuation, which is great. I love the bridge between them. This is the end of an era. Love or hate Misty, love or hate Brock, love or hate any of this, there's no denying it is the end of an era. And while there's a lot of good qualities I won't deny, I'm looking forward to Hoenn. Hoenn is my favorite, probably because I have a huge nostalgia bias. We'll see. But honestly, this was a lot of good stuff in Johto. A lot of filler, because there's 160 goddamn episodes and only so many of them can be gym battles, which is a shame. But like I said, the gym battles and other things are a huge the gym battles and the league especially are a huge improvement over Kanto. Ash gets some good Pokemon. He actually has a brain in these seasons. It's a good build up to the Ash that we'll get in Hoenn and Sinnoh and so on. And Johto set the format for a Pokemon more than any other season. It sets up the formula we're going to get, and each season effectively improves upon it. And in a sense, Johto, the end of Johto, is the end of an era and the beginning of another. Like I said, the blending of Ash going to Hoenn, it's not a sharp contrast. You actually see him going to Hoenn, which I love. It's not just, oh, he's suddenly in Hoenn. No, it's a good continuation if you've been watching the next Hoenn episodes, which I have, and I've got a huge nostalgia bias for Hoenn. Like I said, I plan on reviewing all of these, so next time I will review the Hoenn series. It'll be a while because obviously Hoenn's got 2.5 seasons to get through, so obviously it's going to take longer and longer for these episodes to come out, but boy has it been fun reviewing Johto. There's a lot of good stuff. Johto for me is always the forgettable one. And it's a shame too, because it's got a lot of good moments, but it's just forgettable because you get mixed up in all the filler. Like I said, the filler is not as memorable, and Johto itself, before this rewatch, was quite forgettable, but there's a lot of good moments if you know where to find them. But enough about that, let's not ramble on any longer. I will see you next time for when I cover the Hoenn adventures. See you next time.